Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Novel Therapy. I'm Kate Fennessy, aspiring author and social media marketer.
And I'm New York Times bestselling author Helen Brown.
In sensational, is it cherry red?
Someone said it's burnt, no, it's not burnt orange, blood orange.
Yes, in sensational blood orange red today.
And little cat earrings.
Oh yes,
and a candle lit in honour of a very special cat.
Yeah, yes. We're going to get to that today.
Yeah.
So first things first, we'll do our usual checkup because this is a clinic. So when we get to the clinic, we like to just check in with each other and talk about what we've been doing, what's been happening. So let's go to you, Helen, because you have had a really massive week.
Well, I have, I've had lots of media exposure. I wrote a couple of articles that have been in all the national papers in Australia and one in the Sunday Star Times in New Zealand, and the response has been just, I cannot use that word, but it has been, people have been absolutely touching my heart with so many of their connections that they have to what I write about, their stories of loss and how animals and reading has helped them, and it's been just wonderful. And also I've been trying to find clothes because I'm on book tour in about a week, so I've been shopping like crazy and I can't find a single thing. It's all leopard skin.
There's a lot of leopard print out there. It's one of the things we discussed at the birth of this podcast was the dirge, is that the right word?
No, too many. It's like a plague of leopard skin.
Yes, it's a plague. Yes.
Yeah. But no, don't worry if you're wearing leopard skin. Because I actually have a little bit of leopard skin, but
so do I. We can't avoid it. It's become the new neutral. That's the problem.
Is that what it is?
That's what it is. It was declared by someone somewhere as a new neutral basic.
Oh gosh.
And a lot of the main sort of fashion brands that women go to, like Witchery and Seed and Country Road, they all have. Oh, Country Road not so much, but yeah, they all have it.
I noticed.
It's everywhere.
And there's even blue leopard skin. Did you ever meet a blue leopard? No.
There's all sorts. They're in gym pants as well, like Pilates.
Oh well, yeah.
Pants.
Yeah, can't wait.
Yes, but yeah. So the launch, the official launch was Monday.
Yesterday.
No, Tuesday. Yesterday.
And it was kind of quiet.
Yeah.
It was a bit of an anticlimax.
Was it?
And Philip and I went out for dinner in our favourite French restaurant over there, Bristow Terry, where they treat us like it's home. It's so nice. And we had a glass of champagne.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, and we toasted Sam because, you know, he's always with us.
Yeah, and for those who haven't either seen the links we've shared a link in the group, but basically it's kind of the kids' version of your adult book, Cleo, which is how
I've learned to not say adult book
because
true. Book for grown-ups.
Yeah, nice. That's important.
Oh, always learning.
But there's some wonderful, the articles out there by Helen, I really encourage you to read just in terms of the different angles she's approached it with, why she felt the need to tell this story in the form of a children's book. You can see it behind us, beautifully illustrated by Phoebe Morris, who's a young New Zealand illustrator, who hopefully I'll be meeting next week. Yeah, because there's all these things happening. So I think, again, if you're on the Facebook group / on Helen's page, you'll see all the events we've put in her page for the events in Victoria and the events in New Zealand.
And that's all Kate's very good work. Thank you, Kate.
Well, that's all right.
I wouldn't be able to do it on my own.
No, it's just important because it just helps people to get organised and they can easily see it. So rather than having a big list, I thought, no, we'll put them as events.
Yeah, and some of those events are really filling up. I think the New Plymouth Sir Optimus lunch, they said they're going like hot cakes, and the Auckland event with the very famous Casketeers.
Yes.
That's filling up too.
That's so exciting. So if you are interested in these events, do
register. Yeah.
Because they will sort of sell out, even though they're all free, aren't they?
They're all free except for the lunch. And that's a fundraiser for kids in need. So I'm really pleased to be behind that.
Yeah, and what did that word mean? I remember Googling it, Sir Optimist.
Well, it's
something to do with women's...
Yeah, they're international businesswomen, basically. Yeah, they've been going for years and years.
That's such a cool name. I love it. So a quick checkup from my end. Not too much been happening other than I've been reading again Frankenstein, because my daughter Emmy was away, so she took it with her. This is off Emmy's reading list. So I've been shadow reading all my daughter's literature and English books this year. So I've made some good progress back into Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. God, it's good. And I just can't believe it's written by a woman back in that time who has such insight into science and men and the world. And I'm just saying that in the sense that, God, she must have overcome so much to get that knowledge. Like, it's amazing me that it's written by a woman when to be a woman writer must have been almost...
Well, a lot of them had to give themselves men's names, didn't they?
And Mary
Like
Shelley
George
didn't.
Eliot.
So I'm excited to finish reading it and then to learn a bit more about her and how the hell did she achieve this book that's obviously so well known, and it's really creepy, and I've been having nightmares after I read it. It's really creepy in a cool way. Like, it's scary. It's good. I really like it. Another quick shout out. This is a bit random, but I'm loving this so much. I listen to Audible, which is audiobooks when I walk, and I got a recommendation recently. There's a band called Beastie Boys. I've heard of them. White hip hop boys from New York, basically, big in the 80s and probably 90s, but they're very well known. They have written a book. One of them died, so there's 3 original members: Adam Yauch, Adam Horovitz, and Mike D. So Mike D and Adam Horovitz, who are still alive, because Adam Yauch died of cancer, have written a book about I nearly said the J word, their experience, being youth in New York and the music scene. And oh my God, it is some of the best descriptive writing, because I don't usually read non-fiction that I've ever heard, just painting such a vibrant picture of what it was like to even have to listen to music in New York when all you had was cassettes and radio. And just explaining the different...
And I remember going to New York in the 80s, and it was actually a very grungy, gritty, quite dangerous city, It was a very different place from what it is today. So that would be interesting too.
It's a really, really cool book. I'm enjoying it so much. So it's a huge recommendation. Even if you're not into hip hop or music, I think it's so well described that it's just interesting anyway.
I'm putting my hand on your neck, not in a provocative way, but because I know we're moving on into the clinic now.
Yeah, we are. That's
and
true.
Look, Kate and her daughter, you've had a big 2 weeks,
Correct.
really. So tell us about Milo.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So I didn't talk about this last week because my daughter was away, just on the off chance that she sort of found out. But unfortunately, my cat Milo unexpectedly had to be put down only about 2 or 3 days after Emmy left. So I was by myself, and to be honest, that was always one of my biggest fears as a single woman, is coping with something very stressful by yourself. So one of those, it was like a bad fear. And Milo was so loved by me and Emmy. He's our little pet. That's our family.
How old was he?
Only 7.
Mm-hmm. And what happened?
So basically, I went to feed him in the morning, and usually he'd always be at the door meowing, like 100 times out of 100. He wasn't. So he was by the other door and he was making a strange meow, and I could smell urine, like cat wee, and I thought, that's odd. And just straight away I could see that something was very wrong with him. And I could see eventually that his back legs were paralysed, and he'd weed on his fur. I could see that he'd struggled with the litter. There was litter mess everywhere, and his meow was wrong. There was something wrong. He was in distress.
Did you take him to the vet straight away?
I did. The vet was only just about to be open. I was really flustered, but I panicked and got upset because I think I knew something was quite wrong. But I got it together, got into the vet as soon as they were open, and I rang them on the way to say I'm coming and Milo's not okay. And look, the vet was great, but essentially he just took Milo's temperature, felt his heart, and immediately explained that his heart was a problem. Actually, he said that it was making a whooshing sound instead of a crisp beat. And just in that moment, as soon as it was all registering in my head, I said straight away, is it recoverable? And he said no. And I said, is he in pain? And he said yes. And I said, okay, let's deal with that now. Because he was kind of explaining to me, what we could do is you could take him to the emergency centre in this place and that. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do all that if it's not recoverable. And
a
if
lot
he's
to
in
put
pain.
him through.
Oh, and just, so it was awful. It happened so quickly, and with Emmy away, and honestly something happening to Milo was like one of my biggest fears. so it was a horrible moment, and it was like I had Tourette's. I could not stop. The poor vet, I swore so much. I just kept dropping F-bombs and going, shit. Because I was so like, what? Am I facing this decision now? Like, I'm supposed to be having a cup of tea in bed right now. It just happened so quickly. And poor little Milo, I took a few photos of his little face as I understood, you're saying goodbye now to him. Because he was in pain and he was distressed. Gosh. I just wanted it to be over for him. I didn't like it. And then next thing I know, the vet comes back in, hot cradling Milo, who was no longer alive. And I sort of made a quick decision to get his ashes sent back, which I realised would arrive as my daughter arrived back. So look, it happened really quickly, and it really hit me for six.
I know, I could tell by the messages.
I was really, really upset. And when I get upset, I did the same thing when my marriage ended. I just have to talk to people. I'm like, I know a lot of people the opposite. I almost can't remember. It's not like I called my sister. I went to my neighbour's house and we just talked it out until I kind of got equilibrium back. That's how I kind of manage shock,
well, that's very healthy. I think that's wonderful. It's a way of getting support.
I do wonder what the other people on the other end must be thinking sometimes.
Oh no, I think that is so legitimate, and I really felt for you because you've spoken about Milo so often.
Look, he was my little, because I work from home, you know, he was always around, and I now realise what a possessive thing he was, because now that he's not here and my other cat Forrest has a chance to actually access me, I realise Milo was always next to me, near me, sitting on my desk, begging for food.
Alpha male.
Oh, he was very dominant, and he was a ridiculous cat. He was quite a quirky personality, but I loved him really fiercely. Like, it was a big love.
I know.
And, you know, I will admit secretly, and I'm sure Emmy has seen this, my daughter, but I would just sometimes, like, to say, I treated him like a baby. I'm sure you're not supposed to do this. I would carry him downstairs from my bed to bed. I would just nuzzle his very furry little face in my face. Like, probably not what you're supposed to do with a cat, but I love that little bit on his nose here, and I would just nuzzle right up. I just loved the crap out of him.
And how has your daughter taken it?
Well, look, it was tricky. Emmy's 16, and I think it's so easy to forget what it's like at that age. I would say I expected just what I did, a flood of tears and wanting to talk and reminisce, but she's very different to me. She went probably a bit more internal. In fact, I got even a sense she pulled away a little bit from me, and I maybe felt a bit of anger. And I think the anger was because she wasn't there, because I immediately thought, oh, I'm glad she wasn't there. She didn't have to see him like that. But the first thing she said was, I wasn't there for him. So I think she felt sad that she wasn't there. And I think she's taking a long time to get her head around it. She's told me that she's feeling sad, and she went off that first. She's been staying at lots of friends' houses.
She's doing it her way.
She's doing it her way.
And this is really interesting because I've had a lot of radio interviews lately, and they're all asking me about how children experience grief. And Em's not, well, she's on the cusp between being a child and an adult. And what you're describing is so typical, you know, and they say the best way to help is to encourage her to tell it to you how she's feeling, acknowledge her feelings, and acknowledge that she's experiencing it in a different way from you are. It's probably her first experience of death.
Up close it is. She obviously knows about Mum's death, but that's a memory she was born into. She didn't experience it.
And I think this is where pets and cats are such wonderful teachers, because they do teach our young people and us sometimes how frail life is and how precious it is. And they're teaching us that life is about letting go. And you have to experience this pain and let it go through you. Because if you don't, it's just going to stay stuck in your heart and make you sick. So you have to experience this pain, but then the great art is to let it go. And I think we have different ways of doing that. And that's what Em's doing at the moment. She's trying to work out her way of doing it. It's not your way. She's certainly at that age where she won't want any advice from you.
That's true. And I've been I'm mistakenly, well, as a parent, we all know we try things and we think we're doing the right thing. I've kept talking about him, and I pointed out his paw prints on the car, and I've when I got the ashes from the vet, I was like, do you want to hold them? She's like, no, Mum, like, you're being a weirdo. And she's eventually told me that I was rubbing it in her face. And I felt really hurt by that because I was not trying to rub it in her face.
No.
I was trying to help her to connect. But you're right. She's at an age where she wants to forge her way of dealing
And I
with
don't
this.
know if you feel ready to share this, but you told me of a very similar experience you had with your dad when you went to see your mum the last time.
Oh yeah, that was full. Oh well, that's right, and I hated that. So when my mum died, I mean, I know I don't want to trivialise mum's death by comparing it to Milo's death, but it was similar in the sense that I'd been away. Emmy was having the time of her life in her most to date, probably biggest experience of life, which was this this Central Australia trip she was on. So she was literally on a high, as was I, because when my mum died, I was having the time of my life in Japan. First time I was away from home, and then I got thrust into this horrible world where my mum had died and everyone was days ahead of me. And that's one thing Emmy said. She said, Mum, you're 2 weeks ahead of me. Give me a chance.
Gosh,
I
talk about echoes from the past.
It's bizarre. I felt the same with Mum's death, this horrible sense that Paul, Adam, Jane and Dad were all in a distance that was not able to be caught up by knowing 3 days ahead that I lost my mum. So when it came to Mum's funeral, I wasn't ready. I remember saying to Dad, I'm not ready. I don't want to go. There was this horrible, because we're Catholic, this rosary or whatever they bloody call it. I hated it so much. It was called, I think it was a viewing. It was some Christian practice before the funeral where basically you got to see her open casket.
And for some people that can be a really healing thing. I know seeing my mum in her coffin was really helpful, but she was older and it wasn't anything like your circumstance.
No, Mum was 52 and it was that sense she shouldn't have been there, and it was the horror. But that day, that it wasn't the funeral, it was this day before thing. For one, so I didn't want to be there. I hated it. I could hear the sound of wailing. I always remember my auntie's wailing, and it was just this horrible sound. I didn't want to be there. Dad is in that moment grabbing me and saying, Kate, tell your mother you love her. And I just felt like saying, that's not my mum. This is a dead body in a car. I didn't want to go near it. I saw it as an it. So it was so traumatizing for me. And I remember poor Dad saying, tell her. He was determined in that moment, you must tell Mum you love her. And in the end, I wouldn't. And in the end, he said, I think he was holding me and he said, Jan, Kate loves you, in this horrible shaky voice. He was loud. And I just remember hating all of it. But of course I look back now and I'm glad Dad said that. I mean, he needed to obviously say that, and I didn't have a voice in that moment. And God bless him for actually having that determination in that moment to try at least to connect me. I wasn't ever going to be ready. My sister was able to kiss Mum's forehead and touch her, and I couldn't go near her.
Because they are very different. When our body is a very different thing. The person isn't there. It's like a shell.
Especially because Mum had injuries.
Are you willing to share with our listeners how your mum died?
Absolutely. So Mum basically took her own life, which I talked about, and the way she did that was she drove to a bridge which was over an overpass over the freeway near where we lived, and so she plunged to her death on the freeway. I actually don't know, to be honest, where exactly she landed, whether she landed there would have been 3 lanes on each side. I don't know where.
What time of day was it, Kate?
I think it was 10 a.m. on a Sunday.
Oh.
In 2000, so the traffic, there would have been witnesses, there would have been traffic. To be honest, I don't know whether I've been protected from the truth or whether it serves any purpose to know the exact details, but I know that there are humans walking around on this planet that saw my mother's last moments, and perhaps it was a near miss, I don't know. But all of that to me was summarised in that fear of that coffin, because that was facing...
And you were young.
I was 21.
I read something recently, we're like eggs, and when we're young, the shell is very thin, and so if something terrible happens to us and we're dropped, we splash all over the floor. And you were young. And as we get older, our shell gets a little bit thicker, and so even though we have cracks and we can still be smashed, it takes more, because we do get wisdom as time passes.
That's true. 21 was young, and I was
terribly
off
young.
in that other land.
You were a little thin-shelled egg.
Yeah, I was, and it was intense. It was a public death. It was horrifically
You know, I felt the
Yeah.
same about Sam.
Yeah.
People had seen it, and I had this sort of nightmare thing. I wanted to know who had
Did
witnessed it, yes, where the driver was. And the ambulance driver said to Steve, my then husband, you know, I'm sorry, your son has passed away. And those words still make me quite angry, you know. So these traumatic moments in our lives, they do stay with us forever. And you know, Sam and Rob had just walked over a bridge, and I've walked over that bridge. And one day, when you're ready, I would love to walk with you over your mum's bridge, because they are just bridges.
I know, it's so full on, because it's obviously, to me, become this huge symbol. I mean, I pass under that bridge quite regularly. I've had to train myself not to avoid it. But it of course isn't. I want to scream out, it's not just a bridge, it's the place my mother exited this life under horrific, you know, she would have been in a horrible dark cloud of depression. But you're right, it is just a bridge.
It's 20 years, we can go there.
I know.
You can go there
I know.
when you're ready though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
For me, it was a strange experience walking over Sam's bridge, because like you, I would go around the block, do anything. In fact, one of the reasons I left Wellington was to avoid that bridge. And then as the years passed, I realised that bridge didn't harm me.
Exactly.
It wasn't me, or you know, it wasn't that bridge. It was my feelings about it. And so I was surprised actually walking across it, Kate.
really?
It wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, right.
And once I'd done it, it was like I put a whole lot of stuff to one side, and it was really helpful.
And see, in your case, it was an accident, so there was a person involved who directly...
And there was a wonderful man who actually held Sam as he died. So it took me about 15 years, he wrote to me, before I even knew that man existed. Arthur Judd from Christchurch. So, you know, these things, they stay with you. And look, it ultimately makes our lives richer. We learn better how to live. And when you know that we're all going to die one day, it's all passing, you do appreciate every moment. I was reading a story to my grandkids the other night, and it was one of those technical things about the body, and it said your veins and arteries can be wrapped around the world twice.
Really?
Imagine that. We have that much of a miracle.
Really intense.
Amazing we survive 6 months, let alone, you know, 80 years if we're lucky.
No, you're absolutely right. And look, hearing you say that about Arthur, you know, I kind of do want to know if someone
I
saw
bet
Mum.
your mum had an Arthur.
I hope so.
She would have, because how else would the traffic have stopped? How else would they have gotten
See,
out?
I've been either protected or, I don't know, even, there's a lot about Mum's death that we don't speak about in my family. So,
that's all right.
But
That's how they deal with it.
well, there's a police officer/officers who are at the scene. They're there. I've never spoken to them or know. I don't even know which police station. There's a lot I don't know. The coroner's office, and look, it's great to talk to you about this, because it's this bizarre thing that we have a shared story about a bridge and a tragedy, and we're both writing. So look, you know, back to little cute Milo. You're right. I think there's a interesting parallel with this, how it happened for Emmy, and it is her first grief.
So what a great
Yeah.
gift Milo has given her.
There's a real pure love that Emmy had for Milo, and you know, she was there when we chose him, and I think, it's going to impact her. The same way her trip to Central Australia has clearly impacted her. She's come back a little bit more grown up, I can just tell.
And you can be sure she's talking to her friends about it. You know, it's her grief. It's her
Well, she
cat.
did say, Mum, my cat died. Don't you get it? And I was like, isn't it my
There you
cat
go.
too? Yeah.
Oh dear.
So it was a crappy thing to happen. It really hit me for 6.
Oh,
And I still think there's that little girl part of me that, with that thin shell, that doesn't like death. And I know it's that hissy fit sort of human, like, I don't want to deal with this.
I know. I've been the same. And look, up till recently, I've avoided funerals as much as I possibly could. But my attitude has changed now, and I would have been so happy if you had brought Milo's ashes in,
planning to, but
because funerals are about telling stories. They're
Yeah.
storytelling.
Yeah.
And once you turn something painful and horrible and hurtful into a story, it starts to make sense. And when you listen to someone's life story, even if some of them are told by idiots who didn't really know the person properly at all, it's really enriching. So now when I get the chance, I go to a funeral. They're great.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, and this is something we've touched on, and I know that, you know, in connecting my recent story, but just then about that memory of Dad and Mum's body and how hard, I mean, I hated Mum's funeral is what I'm trying to say. I hated it. I really, really hated it for so many reasons. One, because I don't connect to the Catholic religion, and that was a part of it. And look, there's just so many reasons why I hated that funeral. I wasn't ready. I didn't want my mum to be dead.
Who's ever ready?
Well, exactly. God, it was just horrific. But, you know, I think there's this little idea that's sitting on the horizon at the moment with Mum's 20th anniversary next year and some sort of ceremony, and I think that's going to find its way into my book. And I think that
good. This is what I've been hoping for.
Yeah, I'm starting to see it.
Yeah.
I'm starting to realise that some sort of a ceremony for Mum that is connected with my heart now would be beautiful. Because if I had a chance to say goodbye to Mum now, of course I would kiss her forehead, and of course I would do that. I mean, I would never not take that opportunity, but I wasn't ready. But of course now I would do anything to have that moment back. So I can even realise how beautiful it was that Dad forced me. Dad, Kate loves you, like in that horrible way. But I actually realised that was so beautiful that he did that. I should thank him.
That's a good start.
I've never thanked him for that.
Good start to opening some kind of dialogue
because
around
poor
it.
old Dad, God, it would be so hard for him. And at the time I was so mad at him for saying that. Isn't that horrible?
Oh well, you're
We were
young.
young.
You're young. It's your version of "It's my cat."
So true. So there you go. It's so true. I need to thank Dad. And we talked about making the time to thank people and write letters. You know, I know how much that would mean to Dad for me to thank him on what must have been the most difficult day. And it's funny, I'm sitting here going, I hated the funeral. Dad got up and spoke about Mum. At the time, I remember thinking, this is all wrong. You're saying it wrong and you're not saying what I want you to say. I just look back now and think how goddamn brave of him to be able to stand up at all and say anything.
Yeah.
You know, so I am going to put that on my to-do list to thank Dad and say, God, you were brave.
Wonderful. You
know, because if I have to redo her funeral, it's not because he did anything wrong or anyone else did. Everyone was trying, weren't they? You're smiling.
No, I'm just so thrilled. This feels like a wonderful breakthrough.
It does, doesn't it?
It really does.
And of course I would have loved to be able to be like my sister in that moment and touch Mum. I hadn't processed the horror of the shock, that's all. No. It wasn't because I didn't love her. I did love her. Of course I do love her. So,
I hear from lots of people who are going through grief, and suicide is really one of the worst ones because it's tied up with so many other emotions, guilt, anger, all of the above.
100%. Yeah, it's very hard to grieve.
Massive.
It's complex grief.
It is.
Yeah, but it's funny, in talking about all this, Milo, suddenly, it's like, that's not complex grief. You know, this is this little fatty, fluffy cat who we bloody loved. I mean, my theory about cats is they're like a little spirit of the house. And Milo was a weird personality. He was possessive, a little bit of a bully. He was ridiculous. He was a little bit dumb, I think. Like he was. He wasn't bright. He just did stupid things. I'd leave the back door open for him and he'd, you know, climb up onto the roof and meow at me from my window to let him in. I'm just like, the back door's open, Milo.
Had to be his way.
Oh my God.
So you're doing a little ceremony for him, because I do think ritual is a meaningful way, particularly for kids, younger people, if it's something that she feels she's contributed to.
Yeah,
that's not just what you've thought up, because that would be wrong.
Correct. Well, she's already given a good idea. My brother Adam had a good idea about, because I got his ashes for the purpose of, you know, thinking of Emmy, basically. But then I kept thinking, I can't throw Milo into the sea at Oliver's Hill. He'd hate that.
Oh, he would.
His claws would go up and he wouldn't want to go in the water at all. No. So my brother suggested a pot plant. So I kept that idea, and then I thought, if we get a big one, we can always take it with us. When I suggested it to Emmy, she immediately suggested a cactus, which is very on brand for Milo, because he was a little bit hostile sometimes.
Sharp claws.
Yeah, sharp claws. So I think that a slightly funny looking cactus is a perfect choice. So I'm going to let Emmy
That's beautiful.
choose it. Yeah.
Oh, great. She'll love that.
Yeah.
And maybe she can invite some of her friends around to, well, even just acknowledge that the cactus is there.
Exactly. So I better make sure I find a good hardy one that I can support.
Well, they don't
years
need
to
much
come.
water, do they?
No. So
I remember I had a miscarriage a long time ago, and I wasn't making sense, but probably because of the hormones and stuff.
yeah.
But we had a little ceremony, ritual, where we took a bunch of roses and to a beautiful spot just out of Auckland where there was a waterfall, and emptied the petals over the waterfall
Beautiful.
and watched them going down the stream, and that was a form of release.
That's gorgeous.
I think so, at some level we're very primitive beings, and I guess that's another form of storytelling, to see these rose petals. I can still see them drifting.
That's beautiful.
away.
See, I'd like something like that for Mum, maybe for next year. I've got to start connecting with my family.
And maybe
those
talking
contributions.
about, see what their ideas are.
because that's a lovely idea. Mum loved gerbras. That was her very 90s flower. I always think it was a 90s flower.
Very
But
bright colours.
yeah, she loved gerbras, so something like that. But that's nice to start thinking of that. I
Because you said there was a what's on her grave at the moment?
And again, I'm not dissing Dad. Dad's quite, he's got a strong Catholic faith. So he's put on her grave what he thinks is right, which is the Catholic perspective on suicide is that it's a sin, right? So the message on Mum's grave says, Jesus have mercy on her soul. And I don't like that because I don't believe it's a sin. I don't believe in sin, and I feel like it's admonishing. So, but I respect and understand Dad's thoughts in putting that phrase on.
Do you think he'd be open to having that readdressed now?
I don't think so, because his faith is pretty sort of solid. I mean, I guess I can talk to him about it. I've always just thought, without disrespecting Dad, that when he dies, we'll just pop a fresh one on there. Because Dad's going to be in the same plot as Mum, which he's quite proud of. He loves talking about that.
But he's since remarried, hasn't he?
Yeah,
So it'll have to be a triple
no. It's a bit controversial, and we're all like, no, it's going to be Mum and Dad. Sorry. Because you book them in advance. He's very proud. He's very proud. He loves saying that. He's like proud as if he's booked his real estate for the next life. Anyway, I've always just assumed that when Dad passes away, we will redo Mum's, probably with Dad's together as a double banger, and I would be advocating to get rid of that phrase. But I've got to check in with my siblings. They might.
Yes, because if they
agree.
if they feel the same way as you do about that inscription, it might be possible to change it a bit sooner.
Oh, I'd love to change it sooner.
Because 20 years, your dad's thoughts might have moved on.
Maybe it sounds so silly and simple. I should just discuss it with Dad. I've never mentioned it to him that I hate it.
Well, you've got a wonderful opening with thanking him.
Well, that's exactly true. And because next year's this 20th anniversary, and we can start having these positive conversations, and maybe I can find out some of that missing information.
Yeah.
Like about
There'll be some heroes out there.
Oh, see, that makes me want to meet them, and I've always been so afraid of that scene, and I'm sure you relate to it. It's a nightmare. You don't want to face it. You don't want it coming into your head. But you're right, maybe there are some people who could share with me and connect me to that moment. I was not there, I was in Japan, and I'd love to know if anyone was there that comforted her.
There will be someone, I bet.
Or just respected her somehow in that moment. That's a kind of an interesting thought, and that changes the whole scene of the bridge too, and the whole feeling of it. So these are big things.
They are big things, but I think it's part of that letting go that I was talking about. I think if you hold on to that 20-year-old pain, which is very legitimate pain, it's going to be very hard for you to move forward. But if you can somehow let it sluice through you as a 40-year-old woman now with a daughter, it will free you, I think. You'll never lose it. No. But you'll be able to move forward, I think, more freely.
Well, thank you. That is so. We didn't quite 100% know what we knew we were going to talk about Milo today, but that was a really. I love your face. Helen was beaming. She's like, "Look what I did in my clinic." But I wanted, just for the readers, before we finish up, just quickly ask: could you please tell us the story of how Jonah came into your life? Because I know for those who caught up with last week's episode, Helen has written a children's book about Jonah, which is
Well, I still haven't heard back from the publisher. She might be thinking it's absolute crap. And I'm happy with that too.
Either way, it's still exciting. But could you tell us a little bit about how Jonah came into your life? Because I don't know the story.
I just had a mastectomy. I was in bed feeling terribly sorry for myself and in pain. And my sister Mary came over from New Zealand to look after me. And one day she went for a walk and she said, I saw something lovely today. I said, what? And she said, I won't tell you.
I'm just walking backwards out of the bed.
I know. And she said, I've just walked past that pet shop down the road and there's a really cute little kitten in there. I said, right. So I couldn't stand up straight because she got her to drive me down there, and I hobbled into the pet shop. And there was this lunatic in this cage full of kittens. He was bouncing off all the other kittens like they were trampolines and scrabbling up the wire. And he fixed me with those big blue eyes of his and put his paw through the wire and touched me. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm chosen.
I love that. That's so cute. And you got him then and there with Mary? Or you went back and...
wait, because he actually had a bit of a waiting list because lots of people had fallen for him. I said, I've had cancer.
I have scars.
Yes.
Oh gosh,
But,
so you secured him.
Yeah, but very quickly regretted it because he's so full on.
Was he?
Yeah, and even now he'll
trouble.
still spray. If I offend him, he'll spray around the house. He's a very full-on cat, full of beauty and charm, but
he's very elegant.
He's elegant and he knows it.
It's so funny. I'll quickly share how we chose Milo because it feels. Well, I definitely chose him, but basically, long story short, it was the three of us then, me, Emmy, and my ex, and I was the one doing the mission to find Milo. Bruce, my ex, had a hip operation, so he was kind of incapacitated at home, and his only instruction was make it a boy. He wanted a boy to balance out, me and Emmy, and him and a boy. So that was my only instruction, was a boy. I went down to the RSPCA in Pearsdale, which I hadn't done for years and years and years, so it was essentially a rescue cat. But that day with Emmy would have been about 9, I just wasn't connecting to any of the kittens. I sort of thought, I went through this whole section and I said, if I don't feel like it's right, we're going to leave. And I don't know why, but I didn't connect with any of them. And I was about to go, and then I realized there was another little area. I went to that other little area and we saw Milo. He was called Otto at the time. Otto. But I just absolutely zeroed in on him. Yeah. There was same thing. There was another young couple circling, and I thought, go away, he's mine. And I just kind of quickly snaffled, had this absolute laser focus. I want that one. That one there.
Yes.
White paws.
That one, those people are bending over.
Yeah,
I want that one.
I just saw something in him. I don't know. It's like none of the other cats that day registered with me. And so I've got this little photo of Emmy at 9 holding Milo, who's kind of pushing off her, but they're looking at each other. It's so cute. I'll pop it in the group.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely do that.
Oh, well, thank you. Gosh, that was very emotional, but I actually feel so much better about Milo, weirdly, just by going into those really tough memories about Mum's death. Yeah. Milo is a blessing. At the end of the day, we had the funniest, cutest cat for 7 years, very short innings, but you know what? I wouldn't swap it for anything. He was so cute, Milo.
Fantastic.
Absolutely loved him. Now, very quickly, I just wanted to touch base on our Planet Social, which we didn't get to last week, but very quickly, there is some breaking news with Facebook in the world of social. So as most of you will know who are on Instagram has hidden likes for most of us. So you can see for yourself.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, so apparently Facebook are now going to do that in Australia only. Although it hasn't started for me. But I think it's starting. Is
that to keep us sane and not have FOMO?
Yes, that's what they say, right? But there's a lot of people who think there might be a more commercial reason for this. So yeah, publicly, I think that it's about the fact that they're trying to say we want to make sure that social media does not have a negative impact on mental health. I do happen to believe, just a hunch, that Mark Zuckerberg would not like his product being associated with poor mental health. I don't think that was what he ever set out to do, and I think he might be pretty reasonably horrified to think, I've created this thing that's bad for the self-esteem of young people. So I think that might be genuine, but the other reason may be that it might be somehow to do with the algorithm and ads, and I reckon they're hiding likes so that people forget that engagement's dropping and still use the platform. Maybe that's a bit cynical, but there you go. So it's going to be interesting to see, and I wonder why they're choosing Australia. According to the statement by Facebook, it's because we have a digitally savvy audience.
Okay.
We're the guinea pigs.
And
so
that includes you, New Zealand, I'm sure.
possibly. I think it's just Australia for this particular rollout, but let's see. But yes, New Zealand, we think you're savvy.
Yeah.
So that's all that matters. So there you go. That's news from the world of
fascinating
cyberspace.
And I see you've got a word count down there.
I do, yes. It's funny, it hasn't changed much over the last
That's all right.
few
No,
weeks.
don't worry about that.
But I've written a lot.
It's
but
quality, not quantity.
Well, and I'll quickly update one more thing, which is been good. I had a nice little catch up with a woman called Muriel from my writers group, and after that catch up with Muriel, who has written 2 manuscripts, she said she just writes in little spurts. So I went home and I rejigged my little weekly schedule guide, and I'm trying to now write more often with less at a time.
That's a
because
good
I think
idea.
it's going to make me feel like I'm seeing progress.
And we need to get that overall arch working. Next time, because once you've got the structure in place, it'll be easier.
Yes. So maybe
you'll feel more confident about where you're heading.
Yeah, but it's starting to feel a bit better, and basically I've been reworking that first scene. I'm just reworking the stuff I've shown you previously, but I'm feeling a stronger connection to our characters. So maybe we'll touch on this
another
next
time.
Week. Yeah.
Well, we'll have Phoebe with us, but yeah.
Oh yes. So should we?
Well, we were only ever going to do 8 episodes.
I know. We're rollicking on. But
very good.
So there you go, everyone. We hope that you, and where can people get a copy of Cleo and Rob? Is it just available in?
I think it's online in lots of shops. Are advertising it. You could order it online, I think. But it should be in just normal bookshops, I think.
So look out for it. We'd love to see photos if you buy it or see it out. Please
that's a nice idea.
Please post either to our group or just post it and tag Helen's page. That would be fabulous. Yeah. So it is. It's been a big week.
And it's been quite a clinic.
It's been quite.
I think I'll let you off homework this week.
Thank you. Yes, that sounds like a good idea. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Yeah, we have our special guest Phoebe.
Yes.
And then Helen's off in a whirlwind of excitement. So we'll let you know what's happening after next week. But we might have a bit of a break. But so thank you for that.
Well.
That was really, I don't know the word. It was just really helpful. Good. So I hope it was for some listeners too.
Yeah. Well, it is called novel therapy, and that was a form of novel therapy.
There'll be a wait list for you soon. All right, well, we'll see you all next time, everyone, and have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.